Hello, all. This is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3, and in this particular video, I just really wanted to talk about some of the emotions that you actually feel when you do something like this, when you create an online venture. So I'm creating reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3, and it's really the genesis of it was I was thinking about some way that I can get people to collaborate and get feedback from other people on a website, right? And make it that it's easy and fun to do. So I thought I'd create this platform where you can exchange feedback. So you can exchange feedback for helping somebody else, and then you get credits for that feedback. And then over time, it would earn you credits that you can turn into money as you participate, or it would sort of unlock the ability to pay and to turn that into money over the long run. So I'm actually a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and this is something, sort of this emotional aspect is something that I talk about a fair bit to my classes, and thinking about the behavioral aspect of dealing with these particular emotions, because this is a really true important thing that you feel along the way whenever you create something like this, right? And this could be, the analogy you could look at is maybe you're climbing a mountain, maybe you are going on a long marathon, maybe it is, I don't know, maybe doing a long bike ride or swimming. Maybe it's a 5-mile swim, an open water swim, and what you are going to feel along the way and the things that you feel along the way are very similar to these long journeys. And really what you're trying to do is navigate some of these emotions that you feel. So what are some of the emotions? I'm going to talk about some of the negative emotions first, because I think those are the most important things when you're dealing with this. And I do talk about this a lot in my class. So again, I teach behavioral strategy is sort of one component of one of the classes I teach. And the aspect of it is, so a key thing in the literature and how we understand how the world works is that we know most people know how that they should do something. It is pretty easy to understand what is the rational way to pursue a particular action, right? To do something, they know what the right choice is. But when it comes down to it, we often don't do the sort of rational thing. We might overeat, and then we gain that tremendous amount of weight. We know that we should be losing weight or maintaining a certain body weight. We know we should exercise. But we don't maintain that, and we don't exercise on a regular basis. We know we should get regular communication with people and interact with people because it makes us feel nice, but a lot of us don't. We kind of shy away from it. And these behavioral, sort of emotional things that happen to us really drive a lot of our behaviors and really prevent us from doing novel and different things. And there is some literature on this within, in the innovation literature, where they look at, it's difficult to do. One of the things is when you do novel things is that there's a lot of negative emotions that are associated with it because you're being different than everybody else, right? You're kind of differentiating yourself. That's by definition what novelty is you're doing something new and different than everybody else. And that you have to sort of see the world in a different way, and which means you're kind of, when everybody is zagging, you're zigging, right? You're going the opposite direction. That's really difficult to sort of deal with, and most people would want to go with what everybody else is doing, with what the crowd is doing, right? So, and I just wanted to talk about these things because I truly do feel these kind of things. I'm an assistant professor, which means I have tenure constraints, and tenure is a real thing that we talk about or that we deal with. And if I don't make these tenure sort of hurdles, I got to go to someplace else, right? We have to move. So it's a real definite thing. This is a really high risk venture, doing something like this. For a lot of different reasons, right? It is unusual to do something like this. As assistant professor, I'm trying to do it so that I can actually do better research in the long run, because it allows me, which is really interesting, allows me to actually pursue things or have this sort of software where we can do A/B testing on it. And A/B testing is sort of a really legitimate, valid way of figuring out how people might react to different things. And they're very innocuous, right? It's nothing scary in any sort of way, and software companies do this. all the time. And what you're doing is you're just changing, maybe it's the color or something like that in the background, and seeing how people react. And that's kind of a, one thing that I thought would be really interesting to do this is to be able to do that on a software platform like this. But, to do that and to create something like this, you really feel a lot of anxiety and self-doubt along the way. And I've said this a couple of times before. It really is challenging to keep this up and to keep motivated at doing something like this. You're always worried about what other people are thinking. There's so much self-doubt in that, like, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right way to actually do something? And this is really what entrepreneurs feel like, what anybody is doing that's innovative. So during my PhD, when I was completing my PhD, I had the same emotions. So that's what's kind of helping me a little bit with doing this particular project, and why I'm actually persisting so long and putting out so many videos is I've had these experiences before and I know what it's like. And you actually just kind of go through, it's like this big sausage maker, right? You kind of get grinded through and it gets really dark and it's really awful and you get mixed sort of around. And then at the end, something actually happens that's positive and you get something like that's quite nice. And it doesn't take, so here's the thing, when you're doing something novel, the returns don't happen until 5-10 years out. And it's really hard to get to that moment, right? Those 5-10 years out. So right now, negative feelings I'm feeling right now, maybe it's going to pan out in 5-10 years. Maybe it's not, right? Like, that's the sort of fundamental uncertainty of it. Maybe this is going to be a complete disaster. And you don't know which one is the right thing. And that's where all that anxiety and self-doubt comes from, right? And you talk to anybody that's done something like this, if they're being real with you, they're going to talk about this kind of stuff. And that's, I'm trying to be as real as possible because I know that there's other people that are going to go through these same experiences in the future. And, they might be searching for something like this and they might need to watch this, geez, there's this other guy and that's doing the same thing. He's had to deal with this as well. You do feel a lot of variable emotion. Some days you're like, oh, wow, this is great because, maybe traffic is up, for example. Or, you get some accolades from somebody that say, oh, that's a great idea. Why, this is really helpful. And you just feel great, right, when that happens. But then, the next day you have to come back to the grind and keep back and doing that, right? So those little moments, by the way, always try to be positive to somebody that's doing something that's novel, because those little moments are going to keep them going and keep them pushing forward. There are far too many instances where people are not positive with what you're doing. You're going to run into that repeatedly. They're not going to be positive in any sort of way because they just don't see the picture. They don't see it in any sort of broad thing, right? So I talked about, in my class, I'll talk about John Bogle, who actually started Vanguard Funds, which is the largest mutual funds company. He talked about that. It was years and years and years where nobody were buying index funds, which was the main thing that they were selling. And he was feeling really down and out, right? I think it was like 72 months that they were having negative returns from their funds. It's awful. Charles Schwab is another one that they have these negative experiences for a long time, and they have to convince people for a very, very long time that this is actually a cool idea and this is a worthwhile thing. And it's up to you to push forward with these kind of things. And I'm just trying to be as real with you as possible. It's not, and by any means, it is not sort of a positive experience doing anything that's novel. It is challenging. There is the other thing that is really challenging is you have this sort of fear of failure along the way, that if I stop, then that means it failed, and what does that mean with this sort of all this effort you put in? And that's a really challenging thing to deal with. I actually write about that, theorize about this particular not necessarily emotion of knowing when to stop with something. And that is a really difficult decision, to know when you should stop. And then the other thing too is that often you get this sort of mixed feedback that happens and you don't know what are the right metrics to trust, right? So one of them is, this is not making any money for me at all, in terms of, it's not self-sustainable, right? So it's challenging because I have to, keep pushing forward, even though, it is costly But at the same time, there is traffic that's increasing over time. The videos are getting more views, but it's just not, by any means, it's not profitable. So it's you get these mixed feedback, right? And then you don't know what to do, right? It's challenging to know what to do. And then I think so after all of those sort of negative emotions, and this is why I want to come back to this analogy of doing a marathon, or riding a very long distance on a bicycle. You have all of these negative emotions through those experiences as well, right? Like running a marathon is really hard. And it's not fun in any sort of way, right? Climbing a mountain is not fun in any sort of way. There is nothing fun about going up Mount Everest, right? And having a risk of dying. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to complete something and get to the end of something, that knowledge and being able to complete something to get to the point where it's actually doing something that's worthwhile, or you thought was worthwhile. You get tremendous satisfaction from that. And it's a really remarkable thing to have that satisfaction, to know that you did this. For me, I've put out over 400 videos that are helpful, which means, I'm going to keep this up, and, which means even when I die, that's going to be up there, and other people are going to know that there is, that there's going to be these helpful tips out there. And that's kind of interesting, to say the least. It's really it's a nice thing to do that, and to be able to participate in that sort of way in somebody else's life. And it's really nice to be able to do that. You get a lot of satisfaction from that. It's more of not a euphoria or anything like that you get, and that sort of emotion, but it's more of a pleasant sort of wisdom feeling that you get, in the sense that it is, I accomplished that. That was something I did. It was really stinking hard, but I did it. And there's something to be said about that other people should be able to experience that. It's a challenge. Anything that's a challenge is difficult to do. And then once you get it done, you have this sort of, all right, I did it feeling. So that's all I wanted to talk about today. And every once in a while, it's good to check in with sort of emotional stuff to let you know what's going on. So, all right, that's all I wanted to talk about. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.